Hey guys, I'm Ellie, and today I'm going to be talking to you about standardized testing and whether it is truly necessary or not. Okay, so I'm sure that you are all very familiar with the standardized testing, whether you took the SAT, ACT, or both. In fact, many of you probably sent in your test scores to Gettysburg, hoping it would be another helping factor towards your possible acceptance. But even though those test scores are helpful ways for admissions to determine if you are ready for college, that is not the only thing that should be at the top of their list when reviewing your application. I believe that test scores shouldn't be necessary and shouldn't be so heavily impactful on a student's capabilities. And throughout this presentation, I will explain some reasons as to why not. First, let's go over the fairness of standardized testing. Is it really fair to be giving kids the same level of standardized testing when they don't have access to the same level of education? Research from journalist Susan Campbell states that even teachers who think standardized tests are a good way to measure students' abilities find that the tests are unreasonable for poor and minority students. Ironically, comparing results also gives the poorer scoring schools more clout when asking for money from the state government. It sort of acts as a double-edged sword in this way, if you will. Taxpayers who pay for their district's education programs also want the students to take these tests at the end of the day in order to find out just how successful these programs are and if their money is ending up going to good use. So at the end of the day, who benefits from this action? The kids who have to take the test or the taxpayers? In these pictures, you can see the economic bias of the SAT as well as racial biases of the SAT. And depending on where you send your kids and if you have access to test materials and your education attainment of the parents, it all depends on how you end up doing on the SAT, as well as racial bias. And if they have random questions that don't count and over 50% of the takers are white, the methodology ensures that each year that the questions will be better answered by white people than other minorities, which is not fair to the other people in other races, which goes back to show that it is not fair. Secondly, there are many parents who spend way too much money on standardized test preparation classes for their children. Of course, they want their children to succeed. I mean, who doesn't want to help out their child in any way that they can? But are they overspending without even realizing it? Studies have shown that wealthy parents will end up spending up to $10,000 just on SAT prep for their kids. I'm sorry, but if you ask me, that seems a bit excessive. And as a matter of fact, that SAT has been found to not be mandatory across the board as an entrance requirement into many colleges. But some admission counselors believe that as long as schools make the SAT an option, students will continue taking the test and affluent parents will continue to pay for tutoring. This then leads us to question access to resources for low-income students. I mean, not all families have the luxury of sending their kids to expensive, top-notch SAT boot camps, and they may not have the luxury to take the test as many times as they want due to the cost. Next, there is the fact that there is more to a person than just their test score. Students are more than just a number, but sometimes all admissions see when they are reviewing college applications is their GPA and test scores. And that can be all it takes for admissions to determine if you will be accepted or declined from their school. Students shouldn't be getting into college based on just their test scores and GPAs alone. Colleges should be trying to take a more holistic approach when reviewing college applications. I understand that some bigger schools do not have the time to sit for hours and review every single last page of a person's application, but they should at least try. And just like studies have mentioned recently, if colleges were not as adamant about using test scores as a way of reducing the large amount of applications to be reviewed, they may find that they are overlooking students who may be good contributors to a campus population. I can connect to this personally because during my freshman year of high school, my GPA ended up suffering tremendously. and due to medical issues, I had ended up missing almost 2 quarters of my freshman year, which made my grades and GPA go way down. So over the next 3 years of my high school years, I had to work extremely hard to make up for the time I had lost and to improve my GPA if I wanted to get a chance to get into a good college. And even though I got the grades and did well on my SATs, it was still not going to be good enough for some colleges. They would not give me a second look at what I had accomplished beyond being a student due to my scores and my GPA. Another factor that plays into all of this is a person's IQ. Everyone is born with a different IQ level, and everyone has their own strengths that they have either adapted over time or are just naturally born with. Test companies that produce the SAT and ACT market this test as academic achievement tools for college admissions offices. But authors Y. Brown and Chabris from this article I read stated that cognitive ability plays a greater role in all of this. Ultimately, your IQ will help in determining your success on standardized tests, whether you will attend college, and ultimately the job or occupation you will acquire. And the link between test scores and IQ means that university students are only being exposed to individuals with the same cognitive abilities. This affirms the need to place more emphasis on hard work and drive and not just the test scores. And lastly, there's the big question that has been asked and discussed for years. Should we test students or not, and should standardized tests always be optional? I'm sure that we are all aware of how much pressure is put on kids these days to do well on standardized tests, but will they always have the option to decide whether they will have to take it or not? This just goes to show that more discussion is needed to evaluate using the SAT in the admissions process. It also goes to show that the discussion involving standardized test scores in college entrance, specifically in relation to creating more diverse college populations, has not changed and continues to be debated. So at the end of the day, I still believe that SATs and all standardized tests should be optional, and students should be viewed as a whole and not just as a number. Then this is my works cited. Thank you.